So picture this. It's, 11 p.m., the house is totally quiet, and you're just standing there bathing in the glow of your open refrigerator. You're probably not even actually hungry, but you're scanning the shelves anyway. You spot a can of soda, maybe some yogurt, a slice of cold leftover pizza, or, maybe some fruit that was literally flown in from the complete opposite side of the planet. It's a totally normal modern scene, right? But here is the wild part. To your deep ancestors, absolutely none of this is food. It wouldn't even register to them as something edible. And that raises a really fascinating question about the very foundation of our biology.
What did ancient humans actually eat? Well, the answer to that question would frankly horrify most of us alive today. Scientists have been uncovering proof hidden in caves all around the world, and this proof completely rewrites everything we thought we knew about our own species and about our deep-seated cravings. To truly understand why you are standing in front of that fridge at midnight, we have to pull our story violently backward in time. We need to go back to the very beginning, roughly 3 million years ago, into the incredibly harsh, visceral reality of ancient survival.
Welcome to this explainer on the evolutionary story of our appetites. We're going to trace the chronological survival story of our species, and we're going to do it entirely through the lens of our ancestors' extreme diets. I promise you, by the time we're done here, you are going to look at your dinner plate and your own cravings in a completely different way.
Here is a quick look at the sheer scale of the journey we're going on today. We're starting 3 million years ago on the African savanna with scavenging. From there, we jump to the discovery of fire about 1 million years ago, fast forward to organized hunting around 300,000 years ago, and finally arrive at a, very dark discovery in Goth's Cave just 14,700 years ago.
Let's dive into Section 1, the scavenger's survival story, leftovers on the savanna.
When we picture early humans, we really love to imagine them as these noble, athletic hunters taking down massive beasts, right? But 3 million years ago, we absolutely weren't hunters. We were scavengers. Picture this. A lion makes a fresh kill on the savanna. The lion obviously eats the best parts first. Then the hyenas swoop in for the rest, crushing through the ribs and the smaller bones. By the time our ancestors crept out of the tall grass, all that was left were the absolute scraps. But we had an evolutionary superpower, Oldowan tools. We used these sharp stone flakes to smash open the thick, dense leg bones that even a hyena's powerful jaws couldn't break. And inside was the ultimate prize, bone marrow, a gray, slick, dripping fat. Our ancestors would scoop it out with their bare fingers and just eat it raw. It was a feast that literally no other animal could access.
And it wasn't just leg bones either. They ate the brains too. Think about this. A cracked skull holds almost a pound of solid fat. In the animal kingdom, fat is the single most calorie-dense food available. For a desperate, hungry ancestor living day-to-day on whatever they could scrape together, finding an intact skull was hitting the absolute jackpot. That is exactly why your body still treats fat like buried treasure today. Your biology still remembers that primal desperation of the savanna. Oh, and beyond bones, they ate insects. Termites, beetles, and these big, fat, white larvae the size of your thumb that crunched in their mouths just like shrimp. Insects weren't some desperate last resort. They were everyday dinner for over 1 million years.
Moving right along to Section 2, Fire and Brain Power, the Spark of Evolution.
So fast forward to about 1 million years ago, deep inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, scientists actually found the oldest human fire ever discovered. And fire meant one huge thing: cooking. Roasting meat over coals, dropping those marrow bones right into the embers. The absolute magic of cooking is that it basically acts as pre-digestion. Raw meat and raw plants force your gut to do hours and hours of grueling chemical work, but cooked food is already partly broken apart. Because it takes far less energy to digest, our guts literally shrank, which freed up massive amounts of energy for the rest of our bodies. And that saved energy powered one astonishing evolution: our brains. Your brain is only about 2% of your overall body weight, but it devours a staggering 20% of your body's calories. You simply cannot run a machine that powerful on raw leaves and grubs. Cooking gave us our large brains, and those brains gave us, everything else.
Let's look at Section 3, the ancient sugar craving, the hadza and the honey.
Let's jump ahead a bit more, to about 300,000 years ago. By this time, your ancestors looked a lot like you do today, and they were officially hunting and gathering. But there was one prize they wanted above absolutely everything else: sugar.
On one hand, you have dripping, hard-earned wild honeycomb. The Hadza, which is a hunter-gatherer tribe in Tanzania today, still climb incredibly dangerous trees and endure hundreds of awful bee stings just to get it. Why go through all that? Because literally nothing else in the wild packs that many calories into a single bite. Now, on the other hand, you have a glazed donut. Your brain is hardwired to crave sugar because for hundreds of thousands of years, sugar meant instant energy and extra fuel that your body safely stored away as fat to survive famines. Your internal program literally cannot tell the difference between wild honey in a tree and a donut from a convenience store. Modern food companies simply took that ancient survival signal and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar business.
Alongside sugar, our ancestors developed a very deep craving for protein. Think about the economics of one big kill. Hunting a single mammoth could feed a whole tribe for weeks. That one event saved hundreds of hours that would have otherwise been spent painstakingly digging up roots all day. With all that saved time, early humans could finally invest deeply in their tribes. They could raise children longer, they taught complex skills, they invented way better tools, and, perhaps most profoundly, it created the free time they needed to just sit around a fire and tell stories. Our craving for meat is deeply tied to the very birth of human culture itself. It's a real game changer.
Which brings us to a rather grim chapter. Section 4, A Dark Ritual Uncovered. Gough's Cave, 14,700 years ago. Just 14,700 years ago, inside Gough's Cave in England, researchers uncovered a genuinely terrifying story. They found human bones, but the skulls had been meticulously cleaned with stone tools, the faces carefully removed, shaping the tops of the skulls into actual cups. And the long bones of the arms and legs? They had been cracked open for marrow in the exact same way our deep ancestors cracked open antelope bones. Now, you might assume this was a desperate act of starvation, right? But look at the math here. A human body provides about 125,000 calories. A bison, 600,000. A mammoth gives you 3 million. The wild part is, the cave was already full of the remains of horses and deer, so humans were not an efficient food source. Eating other humans here wasn't about hunger at all. It was a deliberate choice.
To quote one of the researchers, this wasn't a last resort. This was a ritual. They actually found a human forearm bone at Gough's Cave that was carved with an intricate zigzag pattern after the meat had been removed. And this wasn't just some isolated freak incident. Similar remains had been found across Germany, France, Spain, and Croatia. For thousands of years across ancient Europe, humans were doing this to each other, not to survive, but because somewhere in our history, we decided the act meant something profound.
Okay, on to Section 5, The Taste for Rot, Ancient Cheese and Fermentation.
Ancient humans didn't just eat fresh meat. Think about it. When a hunter killed a really large animal, they obviously couldn't eat it all before it spoiled, so they stashed it. They buried it in caves or hid it under rocks in freezing streams for weeks, sometimes months. When they finally came back for it, the meat was literally crawling with maggots and reeking of severe decay, and they feasted on it anyway. Why on earth would they do this? Because rotting meat is essentially pre-digested by bacteria. It makes it way easier to chew and much easier for the body to absorb. But more importantly, those bacteria naturally produced essential B vitamins that the human body desperately needed to function.
Now, before you judge them too harshly for eating rotten meat, I want you to think about cheese, yogurt, sourdough bread, beer, pickles. Your body actually still remembers the benefits of ancient decay. Every single fermented food that we absolutely love today is really just rot that has been carefully slowed down and made safe. Your refined taste for a nice aged cheese didn't magically develop in some pristine French dairy. No, it developed on a brutal savanna hundreds of thousands of years ago when our ancestors were eating something far, far worse.
And that brings us to our final chapter, Section 6, Trapped in a Modern Pantry, the 3-million-year-old script.
We are all essentially trapped in a modern pantry, but we're running a 3-million-year-old script. Every intense craving you have today for fat, for salt, for sugar, is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. Your biology operates under one very simple rule. Eat what's rich and eat it while you can, because tomorrow there might be absolutely nothing. If you dropped a modern human 50,000 years into the past, we would die in days, for sure. We couldn't outrun an animal or crack open thigh bones with rocks. We would literally starve to death staring at a landscape full of food we couldn't even recognize. But flip it around. If you drop the 50,000-year-old human directly into your kitchen right now, they would think they had walked into a god's pantry. Sweet drinks perfectly sealed in metal, fresh milk, endless loaves of bread.
To them, it would look like the wealthiest, most abundant place anyone had ever walked into.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. The next time you're standing in front of your fridge late at night, reaching for that cold leftover pizza, just ask yourself, are you eating to survive right now, or are you just following a 3 million-year-old script? For 3 million years, every single human who ever lived was hungry, cold, and tired. You and I, we might just be the very first generation that isn't, and we honestly have absolutely no idea how incredibly rare that is. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you next time.